Jefferson Global Summit. Speakers from the national stage speak out on issues of local and global importance. Here is Lilly Broadcasting Washington correspondent Jacqueline Policastro.
Good evening. Tonight we're taking you behind the scenes of the Jefferson Educational Society Global Summit. The meeting of some of the best political minds in the nation happened right here in Erie. Here's what's coming up on today's show. We go in depth with four-time presidential advisor David Gergen, host a short debate with Bill Kristol and Howard Dean, pick think tank expert Thomas Mann's wonky brain, and hear about how C-SPAN is helping us all get a glimpse into the lives of America's first ladies. But first, let's take a look at how Erie feels about spending the week with this group of political superstars.
So I want you to think about this.
It's all about getting people to look at things in new ways. Erie's most interested citizens filed in, took a seat, supported their favorite speaker, and even got their book signed.
I always like to hear from people who have all that knowledge and all that background, and they offer different perspectives, gives you a new way to look at things, and I just love what the Jefferson Society does.
The nonprofit was founded to promote civic enlightenment and community progress for Erie, giving people a chance to study and discuss.
This is an assembly of scholars that you wouldn't find anywhere else. I mean, you'd have to go to Washington or New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco. It's here in Erie, and I mean, it's really insightful.
Professor Dr. David Kozak is in the position to judge.
Studying this stuff for more than 40 years. I learned so much. My students have learned so much.
The Jefferson Society Global Summit continues to grow, attracting top talent from across the country.
You know that they're out there, but you usually don't get a chance to meet them in a small forum like this.
Part of what makes the Global Summit stand out. Now the man you're about to hear from has been close to power his entire political career. David Gergen was a journalist and he advised 4 presidents, but now you're most likely to see him on CNN or in the halls at the Harvard Kennedy School. Here's what he tells us about the most pressing political news happening right now. You advised 4 different presidents, Nixon, Ford, Reagan, and Clinton. If you were on President Obama's team, would you do anything differently?
Yeah, I think they could do a lot of things differently. Let's give the president, his due. He has done a number of things right. We did not go over the cliff and have a depression, as many people thought we would. I worked for 4 presidents. 2 of them tried to reform health care, make it universal. We both failed. Obama came along and succeeded.
When it comes to the president's signature law, Obamacare,
right.
When he said to the American public, if you like your insurance, you can keep it, was he lying?
Well, millions of Americans feel bamboozled. They've sensed that they've been lied to. They depended on that. But now the rollout and the technical incompetence that's gone into it, as well as a sense of being lied to, I think has been it's not quite a catastrophe yet, but it's becoming that.
But do you think he straight up lied?
I think the White House intentionally misled the country on it. There's a big story that it was in one of the newspapers, I think the Wall Street Journal, that they had a big argument about whether they should be straightforward about this or not. And they knew that a lot of people who had substandard plans were going to lose their plans. And they decided not to tell people. And that shows an intentionality about misleading people. So, I think the country does feel bamboozled.
Do you think President Obama is a lame duck president?
That question is just over the horizon. If he can get a couple things done here before the end of this year, if he made some real progress with Iran, if he made some real progress with the budget, that question would recede. But if he's in the same shape 2 months from now that he is today, he's going to be widely proclaimed a lame duck. And by the way, he still would have 3 more years to govern, so that's a real problem for the country.
What do you think the White House can do then to allow the president to get back to governing?
He needs a new, fresh start with a fresh team to make this work. I think that he needs to shake it up some. And people say, yeah, okay, he understands, he gets the message. We're going to be in better hands. I see some really, really good people going in.
Is that your idea, or do you think that's actually going to happen? Do you anticipate a shakeup?
No, I don't think it's going to happen. I think that they feel besieged, but they also feel like they're victims, that somehow people don't understand. They're doing a lot better job than anybody understands, that they mean well. And look, having been in 4 White Houses, I can tell you, every White House feels like that. We always felt, if only they understood how wonderful our president is. You know, you can get into a bubble in the White House. You know, you don't necessarily live in reality. You cover the Hill, Jacqueline. You know what they, you know, up there they live in small bubbles, but in the White House is a big bubble.
For Republicans, what can they do between now and 2016 to shape their image? And if there's a Republican that you think can galvanize support, who is it?
And the Republican Party has a choice. They can either continue to put up candidates, you know, like a woman on a broomstick who goes down in Delaware, and lose the seats that they might otherwise get and become more of a minority party. Or they can begin to get back to the center-right. You know, the country needs a center-right party. The country needs a center-left party. It's healthy for us. What we don't need are far-right or far-left parties. And we're moving in that direction.
If there's a Republican who can beat Hillary Clinton in 2016, who do you think it is?
Well, in my judgment, and I may plot here because somebody can come out of the blue and, you know, excite everybody at the last minute. That sometimes happens. But I think the 2 people with the best shot at beating Hillary Clinton are Chris Christie and Jeb Bush. Now, I'm partial. I happen to be closer to their politics than I am to the politics of Rand Paul or Ted Cruz or some of the hard right folks. But I think Jeb Bush is extraordinarily well qualified for the office. And Chris Christie has this certain panache about him, and I think he's a straight shooter. You know, frequently in an election, what people look for is someone who is not like the person they've just had.
Yeah.
And so they're going to be looking for the anti-Obama. And that person is someone who is a straight, hard-hitting, tough leader. And Christie comes very close to that mold.
Again, that's David Gergen. Coming up, Howard Dean versus Bill Kristol. I'll host a short debate you don't want to miss. It includes a zinger about who's not running for president. Welcome back. We're taking you inside the Jefferson Educational Society Global Summit and bringing you 2 men from opposite sides of the aisle who have a lot to say about Obamacare and presidential politics. You probably already know their names, but you might be surprised by their politics. I'm here with Howard Dean, former governor of Vermont and DNC chair, and Bill Kristol, of course, political analyst and editor of the Weekly Standard. We're going to have a quick debate. Today, the healthcare.gov numbers came in. We found out about 27,000 people signed up in the first month. Do you think that's good enough?
Well, even though the Obama administration doesn't think it's good enough, they will say that they'll do better. We'll see. We'll see. I think it's people, I'm not sure they will do that much better, because I think as people see the choices they're getting, they may not be very happy.
Howard Dean, a doctor for more than 10 years, right? I mean, what do you think about this whole system?
It wasn't my first choice, but I think it can work because it worked in Massachusetts. Only 132 people in Massachusetts signed up the first month of Romney Care. So I think it can work, and I think it will work, but they've got a long way to go. The one thing I think they need to do differently is they've really got to have a paper backup system, because they have one of 2 choices. They either really do have to pass a bill letting everybody keep their insurance for another 3 months, and these are mostly lousy insurance companies that are well, they're insurance companies too, but insurance policies that are being replaced. Or they have to get people to sign up. You cannot leave these people without insurance. And if it were me, I'd have a paper system or a telephone system, which is actually not possible now. The reason it's not possible is because the tie-in with the IRS and a few other things like that doesn't work, and they're just going to have to override that manually.
All right, I've got to let you start the next question. Do you think Obamacare is going to be the president's legacy? Is there anything the White House can do to change that?
No, it'll be the president's legacy whether it works or whether it doesn't. I think it will, but Bill may have a different opinion.
Yeah, do you think there needs to be a shakeup in the White House?
Well, I think it's his legacy. I mean, he fought for it, he passed it, he's defended it for 3 years. He could shake things up if he wished. Maybe he will find a new HHS secretary, and this obviously was a failure of just execution in terms of the website. But for better or worse, this is going to be, I think, his most important domestic legislative achievement or accomplishment or not accomplishment, depending on what it is.
Well, gentlemen, you both know that everyone's already talking about 2016. You said you don't think Rand Paul would be a good candidate on the Republican side. What about this guy, Howard Dean? Do you think that he'll run? Do you think he'll be a good candidate?
Of course he should run, because we need a populist challenger from the left against Hillary Clinton, who's much too cozy with Wall Street. I'm semi-serious about this. I actually do think it would be healthier. Well, I'll say this, in both parties, and the Republican Party, it's been more maybe unpopular over the years. I've always been for vigorous primary competition. I think it's a myth that it hurts the party to have that competition. I think it often helps it. The worst thing you can do is coronate someone. Everything gets set in place. People start to coast. There are no fresh ideas, no fresh thinking, no new groups come into the system. And so I would, as a Republican, actually, I'm very happy this time that we do not have our traditional front-runner, anointed candidate. Everyone, has all the money, and everyone else kind of desperately tries to get in the game and can't quite do it. I don't think it'll be that way on the Republican side this time.
You're looking at Chris Christie then.
No, I think Christie is one of several formidable candidates, but he has to show he can transition from being apparently a successful governor to having a national agenda. I mean, Howard was a governor. You can talk about this more than I can, but it's a myth. If you're a good governor, it's a credential. But Americans don't think he was a good governor of state X or state Y, let's make him president. They want to know what the national vision is. Howard Dean became famous not because, with all due respect to his accomplishments as governor of Vermont, because of anything particular he had done in Vermont. He became famous because he had a distinctive message for national Democrats. And the challenge for Christie is, does he have a distinctive, I hope he does, conservative reform message for national Republicans?
All right, Howard Dean, you're going to run for president in 2016?
I'm supporting Hillary Clinton.
Hillary Clinton, not Elizabeth Warren, Hillary Clinton.
I like Elizabeth Warren, but I'm supporting Hillary Clinton.
All right, does that mean that you're not going to run for president?
It's highly unlikely.
Highly unlikely. All right, we'll take that. Well, thank you both for your time for this debate. Howard Dean.
Thanks very much.
Next on the show, he's from one of the most well-known think tanks in Washington. Dr. Thomas Mann delivers what he says is the hard truth about Congress and why it's so dysfunctional. You're watching Inside the Global Summit, where we're talking politics with some of the biggest names in the business. The Brookings Institution's Dr. Thomas Mann says it's a broken business, and he has some strong ideas about what needs to change. Let's talk about this political dysfunction. I have your book here. It's even worse than it looks. Tell me about it.
It's pretty bad, isn't it? That was our original title from last year. Now, when bringing out the paperback, we thought maybe we should have said it's even worse than we said. You would have thought after the 2012 elections, which were pretty decisive, that there might be a window for some constructive policy making, but this year has just been dreadful. A series of self-inflicted crises, of hostage-taking. We have a sequester, we had a government shutdown, we had a threat of public default, we are cutting programs in irrational ways that do damage, that in the long run will probably increase our level of debt.
You're painting a pretty tough picture, and I cover Congress every single day, so I know that what you're saying is very true. What's the way out?
Well, in the long term, we need to reduce the level of partisanship. We need to make it easier for majorities to act in the Congress and not be frustrated by filibusters and holes and other steps taken simply to oppose and not to force compromise of any kind. But in the immediate term, the public is, if it doesn't like government dysfunction, it's got to give one party the control of both ends of Pennsylvania Avenue. That is to say, divided party government in a period of intense partisan polarization is a formula for vehement obstruction and dysfunction.
So are you saying that Republicans, especially Tea Party Republicans, are at fault for the dysfunction?
Most of it right now, it turns out they are. That's a very difficult thing to say for me and my co-authors, since we have 40 years of being straight shooters, nonpartisan analysts in Washington. But there comes a time when you have to describe the reality. And if the reality is not balanced and you treat it as balanced, then you're doing a great disservice to the public. Until the public realizes that the Republican Party in recent years has become a radical party, not a conservative party, that their problem solvers are being driven from the party. They're now trying to fight it out a bit between the establishment and the Tea Party, but this has been happening for decades.
There's certainly political dysfunction at the White House as well, and the president isn't a Republican. So what about that?
Well, I'm a deep skeptic of those who believe that the president, under these conditions, that is, with a Republican House, is in a position to do anything. Leadership is contextual. No leader in America has done well without having the support of his own party or an opposition party with diverse views willing to compromise.
So I've got to ask you, if nothing changes in the House, if Republicans still control the House after 2014, can anything get done in Washington?
Not much. In fact, we're better off if nothing does, because what's been happening lately is just really negative, destructive things have been taking place. And until we either get one party in control of both ends of Pennsylvania Avenue, or we get governing and opposition parties that are really willing to say, I don't have all the answers. I don't insist on a utopian radical vision of the future. Let's solve some problems. Until then, it's going to be just as bad or worse than it is now.
All right, Tom Mann with the Brookings Institution. Let's hope the dysfunction discontinues. We'll have to wait to see if that's going to happen. Well, you've probably watched before. C-SPAN is in 110 million homes throughout the nation. Coming up, C-SPAN founder Brian Lamb helps us get a glimpse inside the lives of the First Ladies. This is Inside the Global Summit. It's hard to think of the White House without the First Ladies. Here to help us discover why they're so important, this is C-SPAN creator Brian Lamb and historian Richard Norton-Smith. They're working together on a series about the First Ladies. Richard, we're talking about the influence of the First Ladies. What did you find that sort of shocked you throughout your studies?
Nothing.
Nothing?
No. Nothing shocking. There are, I suppose, individual characters who, taken out of their time and place, might seem a little bit unusual or surprising or in questionable taste.
What made you want to put this material on TV, on C-SPAN, for viewers all around the country to see?
Well, Richard has been our source of historical ideas for years, and this has never been done quite this way. And we just thought it was a great idea, and it took, how many weeks is it going to take? 40
weeks.
40 weeks. And it just seems to make sense that the women of the spouses of these presidents have played a much bigger role than I think people know, and he's proved it.
People often talk about the role of a woman in a home. Would the White House be the same without the First Ladies?
Well, ask James Buchanan. And actually, he was lucky. He had a marvelous niece who became a celebrity in her own right.
The only Pennsylvania president.
That's right, the only Pennsylvania president. We never quite recovered. No, it makes an enormous difference. But the job has evolved. Eleanor Roosevelt was the first lady at press conferences. Bess Truman didn't have press conferences. Can you imagine a first lady today without a cause? It's hard to do so. Television has transformed the presidency and made family life. The presidents come into our homes more than anyone except members of our family. First ladies, in effect, are adopted members of our families. That changes the job in a profound way.
Well, C-SPAN has a local face too. Erie native Steve Scully has been with the network for more than 20 years. Coming up, he tells us about one important thing you can do, but only if you vote. Welcome back to Inside the Jefferson Society Global Summit. Erie native and C-SPAN host Steve Scully helps us break down why politics matters in Washington and right here in Erie. Steve, why should we pay attention to what's happening in Washington?
Because it affects all of us. I mean, if you think about everything that we do in Washington, one way or another impacts the American people, impacts people in Erie, whether it's healthcare, roads, bridges, education. And so if you don't understand how Congress works, what the agenda is by the president, what's happening on the state and local level, then I think you're missing out.
So the message is it's valuable to be informed.
Absolutely. And if you don't follow what's happening, more than anything else, you can have good dinner conversation, but it also does affect you. If you're looking for a career, if you're trying to figure out what's your next move, understanding where the industry is going, where the country is going, and following all of that, I think, makes you a better person and also makes you more successful.
When it comes to politics here in Erie, why should people get involved?
Well, this is a great town, and if you're not involved, you can't complain. So what I tell people is that if you are involved in the issues, if you go to town hall meetings, if you go to city council meetings, if you get involved in the campaign, then you have the right to really complain about what's happening. It's more than just voting. You know, it's been said that the best title is to be a citizen of the country. Become a citizen of Erie. And that means giving back to the community, understanding what's happening in the community, and really participating, because then you have a say in what's happening. And the best thing about Erie, it's a small, mid-sized town, and so by getting involved, you really can have a huge impact on the community.
And it means you get to complain too.
Absolutely.
You heard it from Steve Scully. Thank you so much.
Good to be with you. Thanks so much.
Well, as we've learned tonight, politics can be polarizing. It can be fun, and it has an impact on all of our lives. This week here in Erie, we learned there's more to the debate than just talking points from each side. Politics is about where our country is headed and how we can make it better. As Americans, our freedom is protected by our democracy, and as voters, we have the power to decide what that means at this very moment. Thank you for watching our special on the Global Summit. I'd love to hear from you. Reach out to me on Facebook at Jacqueline Policastro or on Twitter at J_Policastro. I'll see you all back in Washington. Have a great night.
The Jefferson Global Summit. Speakers from the national stage speak out on issues of local and global importance. This has been Lilly Broadcasting Washington correspondent Jacqueline Policastro.